joining us from. Welcome to another edition of the Digital Down Running weekly business talk show on LinkedIn Live, now globally syndicated on TuneIn Radio through IPGR, the world's #1 business talk, news and strategy radio network. Today on the Digital Download, we are wrapping up the year with a look ahead to 2026, and I have to say that our panelists have made their most to wear absolutely cracking jumpers. But creating content, we're going to talk about content today. So creating content can feel like walking through a minefield. What do I say? How often do I say it? What if I look stupid? It seems complicated, dangerous, and frankly, like a lot of hard work. But here is the hard truth for the coming year. Content is no longer optional. It is modern day prospecting. Today we're addressing the world of content with our panelists wearing their Christmas jumpers. But before we kick off the discussion, let's go around the set and introduce everyone. While we are doing this, why don't you in the audience ping them and have them join us? Make the digital download an interactive experience, and audience participation is highly encouraged, as you know. So, Adam, would you like to kick us off, please?
Hi, everybody. I'm Adam Gray. I'm co-founder of DLA Ignite, and I'm very excited to be talking about this particular topic on this, our last show of 2025.
Excellent, Tim.
Welcome, everybody. My name is Tim Hughes. I'm the CEO and co-founder of DLA Ignite, and I'm famous for writing the book Social Selling Techniques to Influence Buyers and Changemakers. And I'm very excited with the fact that this is our last show of 2025. I'm glad that everybody's come decked out in Christmas jumpers.
Excellent. Richard?
Good afternoon, everybody. Richard Jones from Curate, DLA Ignite partner. I've stopped worrying about looking stupid, which is why I've pitched up in my Guinness Santa's hat and my Formula One jersey, Christmas jersey, designed to make myself look a little bit more interesting than everybody else.
And it's working.
That was worth the price of admission.
How much did you pay to get in, Tim?
At least.
Good morning, everybody. Tracy Borreson, founder of TLB Coaching and Events, a proud partner of DLA Ignite. I have much to say on the topic of content, which in fact we are creating right in this very moment. And I'm really excited we're doing that all together with Christmas jumpers. Even Adam's kind of Christmas jumper.
Yes.
I just want to explain for people watching. Bertrand is not at his home. There is a slight delay, and we may lose him.
In fact, we just lost him.
In fact, we did.
It's good timing for that.
So the first question is
something about content.
Let's start with the foundational question. Why is creating and sharing content safer and more profitable than cold calling? Now, the great thing about asking a question is you don't have to answer, you see.
I think we need to break down this concept of safe, because I also think there are a lot of people who think that creating content is not safe. And so
I also think that
has their own relationship with that.
I also think there's people that find creating content is safe because they just have to sit in their bedrooms creating it and don't have to do anything else.
That's true. Although whether or not it's productive content is then debatable.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's a really interesting starting point, isn't it? Because I think the fundamental problem with, particularly today, where people are in a swipe left, swipe right kind of environment, the idea of somebody reaching out unbidden to you and calling you and not letting you get off the phone is quite an intimidating concept. And I think that the key thing here is that if I write some content and I serve that content to my audience, they can either read it or not. That's their choice. And I serve something else the next day and they can either read it or not. That again is their choice. And I can do that day after day, week after week, month after month. And sometimes maybe I will have the right content, which they will read at the right time, which will make them think that I'm somebody they should be having a conversation with. But they're in control of that. However, if I call somebody, the challenge is that I'm invariably going to call them at a time they don't want to speak to me. I'm going to call them. I'm going to try to hold them on the phone. They'll feel intimidated and uncomfortable with that. So they'll block my number. So I won't be able to call them a second time. So it's very much like the telephone, certainly for cold outreach, is a way of burning bridges, isn't it? You do it too many times and people literally will not talk to you no matter what.
I feel like this is also, when we're talking about cold calling, the idea of the social media pitch slap falls into that category. Right? I removed a connection earlier this morning because I was like, I'll accept this, but like, I'm not that confident in my accepting in the first place. And then the first thing I got was we can help you do this. And I was like, nope. And not only am I just like, I'm not just ignoring your message. I'm not just deleting your message. I am unconnecting from you. And in this day and age, that's how fast it happens, right? So maybe 60 years ago when people were cold calling, people didn't just immediately block you because we didn't have call blocking features available on telephones. But now that all of this is available, we can't pretend it doesn't exist, and we can't pretend it doesn't happen. And most importantly, we can't pretend we're not doing it. If I'm going to block someone else or block someone's number or remove a connection, you better bet that other people are doing that too.
Well, some years ago, Tim and I were sitting down talking to a prospect that was a sales leader. And whilst we were in that very pitch, this person told us that they didn't think social was right for them. They were going to focus on cold calling. And as if by magic, at that very moment, their phone rang. And this person looked at their phone and said, I don't recognize the number. I'll just send it to voicemail. They'll call back if it's important. And then looked at us with a straight face and said, but we're going to continue to cold call. And Tim just looked at him and said, did you not get what just happened there? And he was like, no. And then there was the big spiel about why our product is different and people actually want to hear from us and all of that stuff. But I think the key thing is that it's an intrusive way to reach out to people, isn't it? Cold anything is.
Well, and even like one of the things I find really curious is this, like, everybody has an unlisted number nowadays. Like, numbers used to be associated with a business. So like the business would call and you would know who was calling. And so like, I get frustrated because I'm the medical decision maker for my grandma, and a phone number comes through and I'm like, it could be the oxygen company. It could be the hospital, right? Like none of these have actual call ID anymore. So I have to answer all of the calls. And then I'm just like, get out of here. Tell us. I don't want to talk to you. So best case scenario, you're tricking people into answering the phone. And that is not a great way to kick off a brand experience.
I saw an interesting post on LinkedIn earlier this week. Some BDR had sort of written a little sort of piece of content about how he'd made 500 cold calls over a period of time, and every single one had failed to deliver anything. And the responses were by and large along the lines of, you smashed it, mate. You know, you're doing a great job there. If you keep trying, you know, you're going to succeed. So I put a comment there and said, cold calling doesn't work, to which he replied, I disagree.
Well, we had a person on here.
What data do you have?
Yeah.
We had a person on here recently that I got a message that he got pitch slapped, and so he said to the person, I'm not buying, and the person says, I really love no's. He was, you know, And we were joking that, that maybe they were sitting in like the 1980s and they had a whiteboard up and they had like, Steve's got 40 no's.
Tim, I've got another no. I've got another no.
Yeah, got another no, yeah. And they're all sitting
it's one thing
in
to be
1980s.
okay with no's. And another thing to, I mean, in sales, there will be no's, right? In sales and marketing, no is fine, right? It's not something to be feared, because if you're afraid of it, then you won't make any effort and you can't get a yes. But at the same time, like I know I've talked about it on this show before when I worked in corporate, and we had our salespeople were making 125 calls a week and booking no meetings. And you guys are like, yeah, high five. This is great. Like, what? The point is to sell something still though, right? Like, so we now moved, everyone's so comfortable with no, they don't care about getting yes anymore. Now that's confusing.
I think I want to go back to what Adam said, because one of the things that he pointed out was the fact that this is something that we rarely talk about, which is that, if we cold call people, how often can we do it? Can I do it? Can I cold call you every hour? Can I cold call you every day? Can I call you every week? And the answer to that usually is no. But I can use content every hour, every week, or every day, and nobody complains if it's interesting content, and you're always front of mind. So this, so how do we get front of mind? Well, I could call you, or I could send you a spam email, or what I could do is go, here's an interesting piece of content. Here's something that would be interesting for your industry. Here's something that would be that I know that that my ICP would resonate with. It's a way of getting in front of people and a way of being front of mind.
Let me just say for the audience, we've got a couple of comments up. Bertrand is currently luxuriating in Mauritius, and he's dialed in from there, so his broadband is not 100% stable. So first of all, Mark, Merry Christmas to you. And
hi, Mark Harrison.
Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you for tuning in and supporting us in 2025.
Tove, what a lovely thing to say. So Tove has said, hi guys, lovely signing off 2025 with you.
And thank you, Tove, for tuning in and supporting
and for being a guest on the show as well.
Yes.
A few months back. And Kai, Merry Christmas to you as well. So
love the emoji.
Yeah, that's fantastic. But yeah,
I think okay, you go, Adam.
No, I was going to say, picking up on Tim's comment. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the thing is that in the modern world where people have the ability to just switch something off, the idea of being light of touch is really important. And the beauty of this from the buyer's perspective is that this is not intimidating. You can read my comment, or you can read my post. You don't have to read my post, but you can read my post. If you really like my post, you might put a like on it. But again, you're not obligated to put a like on it. So the engagement is entirely, the level of engagement and the level of visibility is entirely driven by you. And if you're in the very early stages of a purchase decision, you're not going to want to have a conversation with me because you're scared that I might chase you around the room and wrestle you to the floor and make you buy something you don't want to buy at this stage. But the problem with a cold call is that the expectation of the call is that it's going to be exactly that, isn't it? It's like you're trying to get the phone down.
Well, they've got a script, and the script basically has a yes in the bottom right-hand corner, and because people know how to write scripts like that. Can I ask the next question? Because I think this is nice and controversial. The role reversal. Why sales must own the content and marketing must support the data. Discuss.
I mean, personally, I'm a big believer in co-ownership. I think it doesn't hurt for everyone to be capable of creating content, right? To have marketers be able to be like out in the world being helpful creating content, for salespeople to be out in the world being helpful creating content. We talked last episode about brand guidelines and how they can be handcuffed in a prison, and it stops people from doing that. So there's a lot of pieces of the puzzle at play here. But I think for me, this comes down to are we selling or are we being helpful? Because if we're out in the market being helpful, then when somebody needs help, they'll be like, oh, I'm going to choose these people who have been helpful for me in the past. I already believe that they can help me. And I think that sales and marketing can play a role in that helping. But as soon as it switches to selling and the intention is to sell something versus the intention is to help somebody, then I think that's where it breaks. I think the framework for cold calls right now is that it wholly lives within, I'm selling something. I'm using this 2-minute conversation with a stranger who wasn't ready to receive my call as an opportunity to sell something. And I mean, even saying that, it sounds ridiculous, right? Or I can spend some time creating helpful stuff for people and being that trusted advisor, actually helping people. So that's where I think that's what it comes down to me, is we can be in sales and our intention can be selling. We can be in marketing and our intention can be selling, or we can be in sales and marketing or revenue ops or whatever we want to call it and say, we're going to go out and help people. And then when those people are actually ready to be helped, we take them by the hand and we help them with one of our products, which leads to a sale.
I think from my perspective, if marketing are really doing their job properly and they are being innovative and creative and coming up with stuff that's quite inspiring, then I think the two can go hand in hand. But all too often, I think the marketing side of things can be a bit uninspiring. It can be designed to be uber safe and ultimately a bit uninteresting. And consequently, the salesperson is really what is going to be the differentiator, because otherwise you're going to sound the same as the next guy. So that would be my take on it. It depends, it depends how sort of proactive and inspiring your marketing team is.
Yeah, and they're not that proactive and inspiring right now, unfortunately.
And we've asked before, why has Dell become professional? Sorry, Adam.
No, I was just going to say, I think that the two things, there's a Venn diagram here in terms of what marketing's role should be and what sales role should be. But I don't feel that there's a massive amount of overlap of that. I think that the marketing can have a strategic view on both the creation of content and the measurement of success of that content. You can market, and you're always going to be guaranteed a smile on this show. So they have a strategic view of these things, but as that cliched saying, sales is where the rubber hits the road, isn't it? If you work in selling a complex, high-value strategic product to another organization, that doesn't come from the marketing department or the sales department or the tech department. It comes from a salesperson who is the point of contact and the connection between the two organizations. And ultimately, the salesperson has to demonstrate their knowledge and competency and expertise to win the trust of the people that they're trying to have a commercial interaction with. But that said, the salesperson can only be responsible, A, for the content that they create, and B, for the results they get from that. And marketing can say, this quarter, we want to be tackling this vertical, or we're pushing this product, or we've got a change of direction within the organization. So you should be really talking this kind of narrative. But how you do it, Tim uses different words to Richard, uses different words to you, uses different words to me. And ultimately, that's the very strength of the individuals. And I think certainly within bigger organizations, the challenge is, and Tim and I have both worked for a very large tech company. If you were a buyer who thought, I wanted to do business with this company, and you went to their website, you wouldn't know where to start. You would have no idea how to reach out to somebody within the organization because of the sheer scale of the enterprise and the complexity of what it is that they do. And the beauty of a salesperson is that point of contact, you immediately know who's going to shepherd you through the process of buying something. And I think that's the key here. And that's where the differentiation lies now and moving forward.
Agreed.
John, another question.
I love the concept of like shepherding, right? Because again, I feel that goes into the category of being helpful versus selling, right? Like I feel like there's so much sales activity right now that's just out there trying to convince people who don't need what you have to buy what you have. And like all of the scripting and practices and these types of things are associated with that. And how can we, and then that's really painful. So how can we outsource that to AI and automation? And then it's still painful. It's still painful for the customer. We didn't remove the pain. And we didn't create any trust in the salesperson along the way. So now even if we get them put into the process, no one trusts them as their Sherpa, right? They're just like, this guy, like, I can figure this out on my own. And there's like a bigger societal shift that's happening here too, which is most buyers are doing more of the research on their own. And because the information information is available, whether or not the right information is easily accessible, as you mentioned, Adam, is debatable because there's so much of it. But we've gotten to the point where all of our behavior is in doing self-research, but we've also, a lot of us, been bitten in the butt too many times now, where we as buyers are reverting to trusting our trusted advisors because there's too much to know. So if you're not a trusted advisor, you just fall into the category of too much to know. Yeah.
Yeah, and lots of organizations hire a consultant type person that has no vested interest in the outcome to help them make a decision, so that they don't feel that they're being pushed into something for a revenue reason. You know, they're on a fixed fee for making a decision or giving advice on what the purchase should be. But I do think that we're back to that old chestnut about the buyer has changed, but the seller hasn't changed for the most part.
And I just what is up with that? The fact that, again, the thing that's so confusing for me is the fact that one individual human has changed as a buyer, but hasn't changed as a seller. Like, you're consuming that way from a buying point of view, but you can't see that is also relevant from the sales point of view. What is happening there? And also, is this just people helping you see things that you can't see?
It's slightly ironic that in a sector like technology, where we're selling digital transformation and all sorts of other ways of making life more efficient for your business, we stick to the same old tried and tested analog approaches which don't work. So
we've got a brilliant comment from Tove here. The problem is that salespeople don't understand the AIDA model.
AIDA.
Yeah, and that the first A has to happen before the customer comes to the last A. And that's the point, isn't it? You have to, as we often say, you can write the best blog in the world, but the reader only knows that once they've read it, and they're not going to read it because they don't know who you are.
Just so that people know that AIDA stands for attention, interest, desire, and action.
You don't just jump to action.
No, but that's often
talking about action. How do you build your content strategy, basically? So how do you figure out to talk about? Is it your products, your services? I'm deliberately, and I'm sorry, I've switched the video off to that dummy question.
Yeah. So
thanks, BG.
Yeah. So for content, it needs to be all of those things. We often talk about how there are 3 pots of content that people need to share. So one of them is content about what you do, because if people don't know what you do, they can't buy from you, because they can't think, oh yes, this is somebody that can help me with this problem. So it's really important. But how you share that content is really important as well. Simply sharing white papers and adverts from your company is not going to cut it. You need to give your opinion because you're supposed to be the expert and, as we said, the shepherd through the buying process. So content about what you do. You need to also share content about what I do, because I'm the buyer and I want to understand or believe that you have a grasp of what my challenges are. So writing things that are inherently of interest to me. So things about what's going on in my industry, how legislation is changing, how taxation is changing, all of those things that impact me. I want to hear that you understand those. And then lastly, but most importantly, is content about who you are, because I need to get to know you. If I want to build trust with you, or you want me to build trust with you, I have to know who you are. You can't trust somebody you don't know. So sharing content about what you think, what you're doing, what you like, what your hobbies are, where you've been on holiday, what you went to a great restaurant for your anniversary, all of those things are things that make you human. And it's really interesting. Tim and I did a workshop for a group of sales leaders earlier in the year. And one of the questions that we said is, would you rather have a meeting in the boardroom or take somebody to a sports game for a day? And every single sales leader said the sports game. And when pressed on why, they all said, oh, because we can build a relationship with them and we can get to know them and there's no agenda there and we build friendships and meaningful relationships with them. Okay. So part of your content needs to do that in the digital space.
So here you go. Come to the Formula One and drink Guinness with me.
Perfect.
I was going to say, Richard,
I'm
my husband is
playing-
like already sold on that brand.
What does he do? Does he want to buy some cybersecurity?
I don't think so. Maybe. Who knows?
Well, let's have a chat.
Have a pint and
Yeah.
see where it goes.
Right, let me play devil's advocate here, Adam. Is LinkedIn the right platform to do that? What you just said, sharing a picture of me at the restaurant.
Yeah, every social network is, and Tim often says social networking, the important bit is the social bit. LinkedIn is a social network, and I think what's really interesting is that often people make these statements about this is not Facebook. You shouldn't be sharing personal content. This is just about business type stuff. But what's really interesting is nowhere in the LinkedIn terms and conditions or guidelines does it say that you shouldn't share personal content. And what's really interesting is that if you look at the behavior of those people that say, I never engage with personal content, only with business content, you see that actually the stuff that they engage with is, Tim has got a new job. Tracy's celebrated an anniversary at this place. It's Richard's birthday today. That's what people engage with. So I had a birthday a couple of weeks ago, and I had literally hundreds of messages from people saying happy birthday, hundreds of them. It's like, this is exactly what the platform is for. And the beauty of it is that everybody that sends you a message, or every message you send to somebody on their birthday, you now have a reason to have a conversation with them, which is the whole point of the networking bit, isn't it?
I think it's really interesting to me. I mean, LinkedIn has historically had this persona of professionalism. And as Tim said earlier in the show, and many times before, when did professional become boring, right? Like, here's the thing. No human is one-dimensional. Nobody. Zero people. None of them, right? Even brain surgeons. And I would really like my brain surgeon to be like pretty solo dimensional, right? But we have families, we have likes, we have interests, we have all of these things. And trust gets built when people see more of you. So that does not mean that you have to reveal all of the things about everything that's going on in your life. And I think we've probably all seen those posts as like, that's like, maybe a little more than I would reveal on LinkedIn, but that's fine. That's fine. That's for them, not for you, right? Like that's part of your exercise in authenticity. But people trust me more if they see more of me, if they know that I'm a mom, if they know that I like tea, if they know that I'm close to the mountains, if they know that I like a snowy Christmas, if they know I like a Christmas jumper, right? Like these things are the human things that allow people to create connection. And the more of them you show based on which of the things about you you're comfortable showing, then the more likely it is for people to be able to build trust with you. And if we want to be a trusted advisor, I can't just show up and be like, fact about marketing, fact about marketing, fact about marketing. Like that only gives you one dimension to build a relationship. It just, if it happens at all, it will go very, very slowly. So why wouldn't we increase our luck surface area by showing more parts of us?
That's a great expression.
It's all about building rapport. You know, even in the physical world, every time you ever went on a sales call, or still do go on a sales call, there is small talk that precedes whatever you're there to talk about. And that's kind of what a lot of this stuff is about. That's what builds the rapport. That's what gets, you know, lubricates the conversation.
Lubricates the conversation. Good phrase. Because otherwise there's so much friction, right? Like I think all of us have experienced that where you're having a conversation with a person, it feels so difficult, right? Like you're just, and then we try to get out of that conversation as fast as possible. But when you're like, oh, this is easy, like, yeah, I'll stay in this conversation, the likelihood of you revealing something in common goes way, way up. So let's lubricate conversations, folks.
Imagine standing in the lift with somebody going up 20 floors and all you try and do is pitch. I guess the elevator pitch says it all.
There will be a lot of slaps.
Really?
Who's ever used the elevator pitch in an elevator?
This is a great point. And I think the question here is, would you, right? So we all get sold on this concept of an elevator pitch, and I want to be able to tell people what it is that I do in 20 seconds. But more, is that what I really want? Or would I prefer, if I was actually in an elevator with someone, me to be able to start a conversation that person is actually interested in enough so that when I get out, not on their floor, they're like, oh, maybe I'll come out with you and stay having that conversation. That makes, I think, is more desirable than let me slap you in 20 minutes and then we'll go our separate ways and we'll never talk to each other again.
Would you want to get trapped in the elevator with this person?
It's about being memorable, isn't it?
Yeah.
And I mean, ideally memorable in a good way, right? Yeah. Because there's also people who are like, oh my God, you remember that guy who pitched me in the elevator? That was the worst. You don't want to be that guy.
But I think what's really interesting is if you get into an elevator with somebody and you think, how would I start a conversation with this person? And, you're in an elevator, so there's not a lot to go on really. But if you look at them and you say, I'm sorry, I don't normally say this to people, but I love your shoes. They're fantastic. Where are they from? All of a sudden, you've opened a dialogue with that person. Now, clearly, you're probably not going to buy a pair of shoes. Well, you might do, but who knows? But if you have some kind of basis for having a conversation that they feel obligated to answer, you've then got a bit of backwards and forwards. And I think most people that are reaching out to somebody that they don't know for the first time kind of get that in the face-to-face environment, so your joke, Tracy, about you get in an elevator, who's actually used, or Richard's joke, who's actually used an elevator pitch in an elevator. Well, nobody ever has, because they know that it's just a ludicrous way to start. What I find really fascinating is that so many people behave in the digital domain exactly the way they wouldn't behave in the face-to-face, in the real world. And what they need to do is they need to think about, how can I behave in the same authentic way digitally that I do when I'm actually meeting somebody face to face, in a way that people don't run off screaming?
Here's a question. Does the elevator salesman have an elevator pitch?
There's actually a joke.
Good question.
There's actually
Anyone
a joke,
in the
Richard.
comments an elevator sales?
I thought I'd made that
It was
one
a
up.
joke. It was a joke.
No, so the
So
joke.
we-
There's a joke is that I was in a hotel and a woman come up to me and she said, "I want to get you upstairs as fast as I can." And she worked for name the elevator company.
Otis or Schindler.
Yeah.
Schindler, did you say? I think Schindler's List.
It is. It is. They are a lift company.
Next question.
All the jokes.
Have you got the next question, Bertrand?
Yeah, we talked about strategy, but I would like to talk about frequency, because that's I'm sure that our audience has that question. So how often should he publish content?
How often?
Is there a rule? And I know Tracy's going to pick it up.
I'll start with my rule. Whether or not that is like the global rule is always
Tracy's rule.
Tracy's rule is that as often as you feel inspired to create content. I also think there's like I remember this one person at one point, I feel like they were posting like 6 times a day, and you're like, dude, it's too much, right? Like nobody can read that much content. You missed out. You're not being helpful anymore. Too much, right? But I think one of the like trickiest things for people in content is them thinking they have to create a certain amount, but they haven't looked at their like process for creating content. So then they're just sitting there staring at the blank box going doo 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 doo, and you're all stressed out, and then you create content from a stressed out space, and then it feels stressful or it feels inauthentic, and then what is the point? And so I think one of the most effective exercises people can do is look at their environment and see what inspires them. Get familiar with what inspires you to create. So is it a conversation with a client? Is it a conversation with your community? It's one of the reasons why I do this show. It gives me ideas for content. Is it walking out in nature? Is it watching TV? I don't know. Like it could be lots of different things for lots of different people. But when you become familiar with what your creative inputs are, then you can intentionally put your creative inputs into your day, which means it becomes easy to create content on the daily. And so like I believe in like being filled with content and then sharing that with the world. And then if you have a day where you're like, you know what, I got too much life going on today, I'm not going to post today, it doesn't matter, because you've created this like trajectory of people to fall back on.
I think that's the key point, isn't it? You know, as a general rule of thumb, I would say you want to share something most days. So, you know, the objective is kind of every day you share a piece of content, every day you create a piece of content, but some days you're not going to be able to because you're traveling or you're busy or there's a home emergency or for whatever reason. And you shouldn't beat yourself up about the fact that today you haven't shared any content. But as once a week is not often enough. Once a month is certainly not often enough. As you said, Tracy, 6 times a day is too much. And there's a sweet spot there, you know, and I think that certainly if you're in a sales role, you need to share enough content that you remain visible, but you need to remember that your job, it's not a marketing job. Therefore, to spend all day, every day creating content is ridiculous because you're not doing what your job is, which is to have conversations and sell stuff. So there's that kind of sweet spot, isn't there? And for some people, that will be every day and some days twice. And for some people, that will be 3 or 4 times a week. But, you know, it's kind of roundabout there, I feel.
I my approach, which is more sporadic, is based on when I feel inspired. Some days I am, you know, very inspired. I see something that makes me think there's a post in that. Other days I could spend all day looking for something and I can't find anything. So I try and sort of bank a few things up, a few ideas, you know, that sort of, and then if you have a, you know, if you feel like you want to post something, you can call upon previous experiences and put something out there. But I think feeling under pressure to push something out is going to kind of look a little bit forced, I think.
Tim always used to say, and still does sometimes, there's a blog in that when we have a conversation about something. And I think that that's really important. I think that you know, when you are new to, let's say, Instagram, one of the things that you find is that you get home and you think, oh, I should have posted a photo at this fantastic place I was at, but I didn't. And getting into the mindset of seeing something, whether that's an image or an idea, and thinking, okay, well, I will capture that and I will make something of that now, is a really important mindset to get into in terms of creating content. And actually, yeah, you want to be inspired, but I think equally you need to remember that sometimes your inspired piece of content will land at your ideal customer at a point when they're not inspired to read it. So you have to get enough coverage that, you know, there's overlap between you and they don't forget you, because, you know, they're busy doing other stuff. They're not interested in buying my products. So I have to make sure that I keep putting my products in front of them so they stay front of mind. So I think that I think that most people, but certainly people that are new to creating content for themselves, make the mistake of sharing too little. You know, Tim and I were speaking to somebody some years ago now, and they were head of marketing for a very large Australian telco, and their job was creating content basically, and emailing out to their customer database and all of those marketing type roles. And their own personal social, this person said, yeah, I generally like to post about once a month because my audience are kind of waiting for it, and then they're really pleased when I post something. And we said, no, they're not. Evidenced by the fact that you post something and no one even notices. You know, you don't get any likes on anything that you post. So people are not reading this stuff. And the reason is that between this month and next month, they've forgotten who you are. They're too busy out engaging with people that are sharing stuff daily. But I think often the people make an excuse, don't they, that fits their own narrative. I'm not confident doing content, therefore sharing content every day is not important. I'm not very good at writing content, therefore I'm going to share other people's content. And actually, like all these things, you know, the more of it you do, the better at it you get, and the easier it is for you to do it.
It's like saying I'm not very good at names, and all it does is just reinforces the narrative that you're not good at names.
Yeah. You give yourself permission.
Choosing a practice that can help you get better with names. Right? Like, yeah. I think there is
thanks, Steve.
To do. It's a skill, right? Like, it's a skill to build, and skills don't get built if you don't do the skill. You have to practice doing it. And I think there's an interesting piece here.
Do you mean, Tracy, you've got to
do the thing? Yeah. You have to do the thing. What was that? That was like 2 years ago on this show, I think. Coming back. Yeah.
It may even be 3 or even 4 years, Tracy.
Maybe it was a while ago, but it's still equally relevant.
It is, absolutely.
And not enough people are doing the thing still. It's frustrating. But there's also an interesting point about this is, so Tim hears a thing and he's like, ooh, there's a blog in that, because Tim writes blogs. That's what Tim does. And then Tim turns blogs into content, right? That's one way to produce content. It is not the only way to produce content. You might want to collect stuff in video. You might feel most inspired on client calls and be able to set up a system where you clip your own genius in a call and use that as content. There's a lot of different options, but I think one of the challenges is that people are like, oh, Tim saw a blog in that, so then I'm supposed to blog. No, Tim saw that, and that's how Tim sees things. This is about figuring out, where do you see content, and how can you put that into your plan, right? To see content as often as possible, but also that's practice, right? So we practice seeing content, we get better at seeing content. I'm at the point where I can't possibly post all the ideas I have for content in a day. It's too many ideas, right? Yeah. But then once you get to that point, you're you feel surrounded by content. Content feels easy. Content feels comfortable. You feel at home. And so now all of a sudden it's not outside of something that you would do. It's within what you would do. It's what you're already doing. And so how do we harness that? I think that's an important, because we haven't really dove into all the different forms of content. And there's people who like audio, and there's people who like video, and there's people who like written. And it's just what do you like to create? Create what you like.
Well, it's interesting how many people.
Sorry, Richard.
It's interesting to see how many people post about or say in their strap lines how passionate they are about X, Y, Z, and then can't think of anything to write a blog about.
Yes.
Comment on that.
So Christian Buckley has said, social media is so fragmented, it's increasingly difficult for content to be seen. Companies don't do enough to promote their content and make it visible.
Ooh, can we talk about this concept of promoting content?
Yeah. I'm sure we can.
Okay, because I think it's important to like be very clear on how we are looking at the promotion of content, because the social media platforms in particular have made it very easy, use quotes, air quotes on that, to promote content. And you'll write a post and it's like, would you like to promote this? And you can pay extra and you can promote it to your audience. It's cold calling, right? It's sending out content to people that you don't know have any interest in reading your content. And so I think one of the things that's really important to look at from a promoting content, whether that's company-wide or for individual creators, is that there is a step that happens before people reading your content. Content is a thing that people will read because they want to. So what did you do to make them want to read your content? If you haven't done anything, then you're just in the sea of noise. And I mean, honestly, in that scenario, it's kind of like cold calling, because if I have built enough of a relationship with you that you know my phone number, that when I call, you're like, oh, that's Tracy's phone number, even if it doesn't say Tracy, and I'm going to answer it because I've built enough of a relationship with that person to want to answer the phone.
But I think the key point here is, Tracy, that that's you. That's not your company. And I think that the important thing here is, Christian has said social media, so it's increasingly difficult for content to be seen. Companies don't do enough to promote their content and make it visible. Well, actually, companies can't. Again, in the workshop that Tim and I recently ran, we highlighted IBM, not to criticize IBM. We highlighted IBM. On LinkedIn, they've got 19 million followers, and they did their posts get.
And they've got 300,000 employees.
Yeah, and their posts get 100 likes.
So I actually looked at this today, Adam. Their last 5 posts have got an average of 50 likes.
From 19 million followers. Whereas, one of my posts gets an average of 10 likes, but I've got 15,000 followers. So, theirs should be getting 1,000 times as many or more, because they've got a bigger brand than me, 1,000 times or more engagement than I get. And I think the reality is that the route to actually form relationships with people now is not from the brand. It's from the individuals within the brand. So, yeah, you can love a person, you can't love a company. You can have a conversation with a person, you can't have a conversation with a company. You can trust a person. You might be able to trust a company a bit, but actually, as Tim always says, every company post says, buy my stuff. So it's like, well, why would I read that? Why would I read a post that says, buy my stuff? But I can read a post that educates me.
And
I think it's also
research shows that employees get 561% more engagement than brands do.
I'm surprised.
Well, and I think even when we do get to the point where there is brand trust, it's because it was created by a person. It's not because it was created by the brand. It was created by a customer service experience or a sales experience or an experience that was with a person. That's a brand trust is the sum of that. And if you don't have that, then brand doesn't have any inherent trust. It's only based on the people.
Well, a great comment, Christian. Thank you for that.
So what are the takeaways for people from this? Oh, sorry, Bertrand.
Yeah, I had one last question for you. All is but and because maybe that's we just had an example of that, but What are the biggest mistake I could make next year with my content?
I've got one here. Putting
Okay.
it out, using AI and not disguising the fact that it is AI by leaving all the emojis in.
Okay. I do have emojis in my post, but
I like emojis.
I do write them myself.
But I think so. It's really interesting. So a friend of mine posted this post earlier today, or when I read it earlier today, and it was an AI generated image of her, which, like, if you know her, you get that it's her, but you can also tell that it's AI generated. And the post was about, like, here's this AI generated image, blah, 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 blah. And one of the things that came up for me is that when you are doing a thing, if you have feelings that are associated with that, you can get excited, you can do that. And when a real picture captures that feeling, right? Sometimes it does. Sometimes we're posing with our families and it's not actually like really feeling related. But like when we generate an AI image that does that, we don't have the feeling of it. So now when we post it, there is an inherent gap, right? Because we're saying this is how we look and feel, but it's not how we look and feel. And that gap is where brand trust gets lost. And so while it might look good, and it might look more professional than how you actually look today, that gap cannot be eliminated. And that gap is the danger. And so while I use AI as a like ideation partner quite often, and it works for me. I don't know that it can work for everybody, right? I know Bertrand's got a whole like AI system that is like very helpful in specific use cases, but we've got to know your use case. Just this like, I'm going to use AI because I can make I think you guys hear about Coca-Cola. So Coca-Cola's Christmas ads this year were all generated with AI, 70,000 different versions of it. Marketers are all over the place with the different opinions on that. My perspective is that I didn't actually watch it. I heard it, and hearing is where the nostalgia is, but that's a completely different show. You have to watch out for the gaps because a customer will catch those gaps. You show up and in a real life experience with somebody and you don't match that, broken. Brand trust, broken. And it's much harder to recover. So like, I would say the biggest danger in creating content next year is the gaps. If these gaps are getting too big, your content's not going to do anything meaningful.
Excellent. Thank you, Tracy. Anybody else before we close?
Yeah, I think that content is a very important part of your strategy. So you have to have a strategy for this. You can't just hope that the odd post here and there is going to achieve what you want it to achieve. So you should think about themes, and you should think about carving out time in your calendar to make sure that you have time to create the content that you want. And as a general rule of thumb, this doesn't apply to everybody, but generally, you need to share more next year than you did this year because you haven't shared enough.
And can I
All
say,
right.
and can I say, Bertrand, that there's a blog in this?
There must be a blog.
Probably multiple blogs.
All right. Well, let me turn this back on. Thank you so much for joining and for being with us all year long. A very happy Christmas.
Likewise.
By the way, if you want to know more about what's going to happen in our next edition, just flash the code or visit us on Digital Down newsletter. Thank you all very much and see you next year. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Merry Christmas.
Happy holidays,
Merry
everybody.
Christmas, Happy New Year, everybody. Happy
Bye-bye.
holidays.
Bye-bye.